told that Harry is basically retreating into paranoia, severe depression, anxiety, that he's been crying over this.
I think this was the plan all along. It was to sort of build King Charles up and Britain to the idea that our king is finally going to get to see his grandchildren again, and then to whip that away from the king.
Sheer stupidity. That is the only explanation for the last week and a half or so of news regarding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's alleged return to the UK. It is sheer unbelievable stupidity, imbecility, idiocracy, so many things, like so many adjectives for being absolutely some of the dumbest people on the face of the planet when at least comes to royal news.
If you cared about security so much, why the hell are you telling the bad guys where you're going to be?
This is cruel to do to King Charles, to tease him with a potential visit to his grandchildren, and then when Harry doesn't get his way, rip the opportunity away.
Yeah, all of the above, all of the things that you said, Kinsey. It's a tool that he's using to try and leverage getting that security.
I've been told that Harry in tears, like his voice breaking when he's been speaking to people on the phone.
King Charles waited 4 years to set eyes on his grandchildren. He cleared his entire schedule. He offered them a home within royal grounds. Then, in fewer than 48 hours, the whole thing collapsed. And what surfaced afterward had even his closest supporters questioning everything they thought they knew.
And then on Friday, just a couple of days ago, so Friday, June 27th, we got an itinerary for them. What event Meghan was supposed to be at. You know, what sort of the plans were. They were going to go visit Diana's gravesite in Althorp. And they were going to go to a hospital together. And then on Saturday, it was, no. Whoopsie daisy. We didn't get the security that we wanted. So yeah, now the kids and Meghan aren't going.
Let's begin with why this particular breakdown stung far more than the usual Sussex drama. This wasn't another whispered visit that quietly dissolved into nothing. This was supposed to be the one, the moment the people inside the palace had genuinely allowed themselves to believe in. King Charles had not physically laid eyes on Archie and Lilibet since the Platinum Jubilee. That's years of absence, not a video call, not a photograph sent through an aide, but an actual in-person visit with his own grandchildren.
The backdrop was also that poor King Charles has not seen his beloved grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, for 4 years. They last came, I think, for the Queen.
So when word began spreading that Harry was finally bringing the entire family back to Britain for the Invictus Games 1 year to go celebration in Birmingham, real hope attached itself to it, not just among royal observers, but reportedly from Charles himself. On Friday, June 27th, an itinerary quietly arrived in the inboxes of royal reporters. It read like a genuine homecoming. A hospital visit for Meghan, her first public appearance on UK soil in 6 years. A private trip to Diana's grave with the children.
Meghan did decide to announce it to all of the media privately on Friday, and they revealed that Meghan would be visiting a hospital. Of course she would, in her first UK engagement.
Harry attending a children's bereavement charity event, a symposium connected to wounded veterans, and a visit with the Chelsea pensioners. Specific dates, specific locations. This was not vague, floating speculation. This was a plan with names, times, and confirmed places written into it.
You don't go and say something like, definitively, we're going to the UK, if you don't know if the security you delusionally think you need is going to be there. If the government says no, which it should have, by the way, you don't say anything until you're sure. And if you're just going to, I think some people think Harry and Meghan just enjoyed the...
For roughly 24 hours, it appeared entirely real. Sources close to the palace described Charles as genuinely excited, hopeful even that after everything, the lawsuits, the memoir, the documentary, this might finally represent a small step back toward something resembling a functioning family relationship. Then, nearly as fast as it had materialized, it began falling apart. And the manner in which it unraveled is honestly the part that's most difficult to make sense of.
Literally, 21 hours later, security stub. Harry may not bring Meghan and the kids to UK next month as security request rejected days after King.
Here is where the story becomes genuinely difficult to follow, and where a large number of people started asking what was truly happening behind closed doors. Friday night, just before 9 p.m., one royal editor published a detailed, glowing piece about the upcoming visit, Archie and Lilibet visiting their grandmother's grave for the very first time, Meghan walking back into a UK hospital. It read like the opening of a redemption arc. The kind of story palace insiders had been waiting years to file. 21 hours later, an entirely different story broke. Security had been rejected.
They privately sent an itinerary of their trip to the WhatsApp group that the Sussex communication team manages. It was Saturday where Harry leaked to the media that he, in fact, did not get the security. The meltdown begins on Saturday, where Harry tells some outlets, I did not get the security.
Harry was reportedly reconsidering bringing Meghan and the children at all. The very same trip, described in two completely contradictory ways, separated by less than a single day. So which version was the truth? According to multiple people close to the situation, here's the part that refuses to add up. Nothing about Harry's actual security arrangement had changed.
Stick to the facts here. There was never a change to security. There was never any indication that there was going to be a change to security. Harry's security situation has been exactly this.
Not the threat level, not the ruling, not the underlying policy. By several accounts, it was the exact same setup that had been in place since he stepped away from royal duties years earlier. No new intelligence, no new danger, nothing had shifted.
And MI6 to see if there had been any amplification of threat, obviously against Harry or Meghan. And as soon as they would find out that there's nothing notable on their radar, no intelligence that's coming in to construe that there would be anything serious in terms of a threat against them over and beyond just being people in the public eye, then there's every good likelihood they'd say, you know what, why are we going to bother going through the rest of that process if we haven't got the origins and foundation from which to necessitate doing an actual full.
In fact, some insiders pushed further, suggesting that the idea security had ever been reconsidered at all was, at best, a media construction, something reported as a live possibility long before any official decision had even been reached.
Was outstanding, which I think they did. The security had to be outstanding, and that makes sense. It takes a while to do a security evaluation, and then they can release officers if needed. They did the security evaluation, and they're like, yeah, no, there's just no reason. And here,
which leaves one obvious question hovering over the entire episode. If nothing on the ground had actually changed, why did the headlines? This is the question royal insiders keep returning to. Was this genuinely Harry's decision? Or was someone else steering the situation the entire time? Security expert Will Geddes, someone who spent decades working alongside high-profile clients and A-list celebrities, was asked about this directly, and he did not soften his answer. His read on the situation pointed squarely at Meghan, not Harry, as the driving force behind it.
I think this is primarily driven by Meghan. I think Harry, to a certain extent, probably couldn't care less. I think Meghan is looking for the whole prestige, the whole pomp and circumstance, all the dressings that would come from association.
Geddes' argument is that Harry, operating on his own, would probably not be fighting this particular battle with this level of sustained intensity. But Meghan, in his words, wants the full treatment, the motorcade, the closed streets, the kind of visible presence that comes with being handled like an active head of state rather than a private individual who walked away from royal duties years ago.
to keep Harry away from the UK, because she's good at manipulating him, I think, and only because he's a dense dude. Her manipulation skills are meager at best. But he's...
And here's the detail that genuinely stayed with people. Geddes said he believes Harry's own security team has almost certainly told him privately that this trip is entirely manageable without an additional layer of armed protection. We can handle this, he suggested they've said. It's not a problem. But according to Geddes, that simply isn't the answer either Harry or Meghan actually wanted to receive. He went further still, suggesting that some of Harry's recent international trips, to places including Ukraine and Nigeria, may have been less about the causes themselves and more about constructing a personal case for someone who requires elevated protection wherever he travels.
the principal will dab their fingers into the fire, and trips to Ukraine is a great example. So what they'll try and do is they'll go, look, I am a risk, that people are out to get me. There is a threat against me. And I've seen this with principals who I've usually subsequently dropped, that they go and invite trouble, and they try and provoke.
So if this was never genuinely about safety, what was it actually about? This is where the story reaches its most deliberate turn. According to several commentators who have been tracking the situation for years, the theory works as follows. Announce the visit publicly, get the British public, and more critically, get Charles, emotionally committed to the prospect of finally seeing his grandchildren. Then, once that hope is firmly established, surface the security rejection and allow the pressure to accumulate on its own. The calculation being that Charles, confronted with the possibility of losing this moment entirely, would feel forced to step in.
Honestly, it was so obvious that Prince Harry was using this trip to the United Kingdom as another bargaining tool, as another attempt to bounce his father, as emotional blackmail.
There was just one significant problem with that plan. Charles legally cannot step in. Security decisions for the royal family rest entirely with Ravek, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, and the government, not the monarch.
Is a serious man. He knows where his power begins and ends. He has no power to make that decision. He cannot preside over government decisions. The decision on who to give armed police protection to in terms of the royal family is the government.
Even if Charles personally wanted to guarantee his grandchildren's protection, the system is not constructed to allow it. And that, according to Geddes, is precisely why this entire approach was always destined to fail. Ravek is not designed to bend under royal sentiment or family pressure. The entire reason the committee exists, separately from the crown, is so that decisions of this kind cannot be influenced by personal relationships, regardless of how senior the individuals involved happen to be. There's also a deeper risk buried in all of this that doesn't receive nearly enough attention. If Harry were ever granted special treatment outside standard protocol, it would immediately open the door for every visiting foreign dignitary or former royal to demand identical consideration. The system is simply not built to accommodate exceptions, no matter who is making the request. Geddes' own offer on the matter, only partially in jest. If Harry's security team genuinely cannot manage a family visit to the UK, Harry is welcome to call him directly.
If his security team can't manage him, the wife, and the kids coming to the UK, he is more than welcome to give me a call.
Then the story took a turn that shifted public sympathy almost overnight. Journalist Tom Sykes reported that Harry had been overheard in tears during private phone calls while the family was vacationing in Portugal, his voice reportedly breaking, with sources describing a pattern of paranoia, anxiety, and what one source bluntly called profound mental dysfunction.
Really come out against the Duke, saying paranoid Prince Harry has betrayed everyone and will sacrifice anyone to get what he wants. And he says at the heart of the discredited Sussex brand sits a man, Harry, in the throes of some kind of profound
On paper, that might appear to be something designed to generate empathy, a son devastated at the prospect of losing time with his father. But that is not how it landed with the public. Rather than compassion, the reaction from commentators, many of whom had previously extended Harry some benefit of the doubt, turned sharply critical. Words like paranoid, delusional, and even comparisons to a child having a tantrum began appearing across multiple outlets within the very same news cycle.
You're going to start throwing your toys out the pram and behaving like a spoiled brat, which is ultimately what he's doing, then they're going to be somewhat resistant to not going above and beyond in terms of facilitation.
What made it worse, according to several reports, was the location itself. The family was reportedly staying near a luxury resort, which raised immediate questions about how someone supposedly in crisis over safety concerns was vacationing comfortably just a short flight from the country he claimed was too dangerous to enter.
They're at that luxury resort that Jack Brooksbank's managers, and where they're said to have purchased a property. But it was in People magazine, which, as we know, is the sort of school magazine of the Sussexes, where they put all their notices. So they are in Portugal. But yeah, I've been told that Harry in tears, like his voice breaking.
This was the moment the public narrative turned completely. What Harry's camp was presenting as heartbreak was being received almost universally as something far closer to a breakdown over not getting his way.
I think for Harry, the bruised ego of not being important anymore is really behind so much of this security delusion. This was an incredibly stupid decision. I've said that a lot, but it is true. It's dumb. They look like imbeciles.
Just as the story seemed to have reached peak chaos, it got messier still. Reports began circulating that Harry had quietly accepted an offer to stay at a royal residence during the visit, which, on its surface, sounded like a genuine gesture of goodwill.
King has reportedly offered accommodation at a royal residence, and I've heard that before, like in years past, that the king has offered Harry a place to stay and Harry's denied it. So I'm not too surprised by this. I think there's additional outrage because Meghan's in the loop, and people don't want her to fall back into a princess moment where she feels like she's back in the fold because she's under a royal roof. But from a security standpoint, does staying inside a royal estate significantly reduce risk? I mean, I think that's how can you complain about security when you've got armed guards outside?
A signal that things were perhaps actually being resolved behind the scenes. Except Buckingham Palace's own correspondent, Rebecca English, shut that claim down almost immediately.
Of course, writes on behalf of Buckingham Palace as the head of the Royal Rota, said that after a week of claim, counterclaim, reverse ferreting and suggestions about what individuals may think, as regards reports Prince Harry has accepted an offer of accommodation on the royal estate, no such overture is understood to have been received by the...
Her statement left absolutely no room for interpretation. No such offer was understood to have been received by the royal household at all, not under discussion, not being finalized, a direct and unambiguous denial. So now there were two entirely different versions of the same events, one coming from sources aligned with the Sussexes, and one coming directly from the palace itself.
His role in this as well, and they can't control what Harry and Meghan do. Of course they cannot. But I think, again, that their lack of being able to manage the narrative, manage Harry and Meghan in many ways, and shut things down if things either aren't true or if it's in the middle of a negotiation, something like that. The palace is just constantly letting these things churn, and it does.
Both versions cannot be true. And once that contradiction became public, the specific details almost ceased to matter. What mattered was that once again, nobody could agree on what was actually taking place. That loss of credibility proved more damaging than any individual claim either side had made.
So as Brittany of the Royal News Network put it, being part of Harry and Meghan's PR team must be absolute hell. The series of absolute blunders over their just...
If you want to watch a narrative collapse in real time, this is the section of the story to study closely. One royal correspondent attempted to argue that it was unusual for Harry and Meghan's children to receive less security coverage than Taylor Swift does when she performs in the UK.
One of them is Chris Shipp, who is the royal editor for Woke ITV News, and he has actually been community noted on X over this. So he posted the arguments over Prince Harry's UK security rumble on. Now Harry considering not bringing Meghan and children with him to UK next week after being told he will get nothing more than the police phone number for a liaison officer. Whatever your view of Harry and Meghan and their decision to leave the royal family, it seems bizarre that King Charles's son and grandchildren, who are 5th, 6th and 7th in line to the British throne, get zero public security, but Taylor Swift does when she isn't.
On the surface, it sounds like a reasonable comparison. It didn't survive contact with the actual facts for very long. Within hours, that claim had a public fact check attached directly beneath it. The reality, according to that correction, Swift's instance of police protection came in response to a specific and credible terror threat connected to a stadium holding tens of thousands of people, the same category of elevated threat that had been linked to the Manchester Arena attack years before.
Different situations, the security for Taylor's events were the result of terrorist threats against her concerts. That's why they did it. That's why they moved some of her concerts that I think were originally supposed to be in Austria to London because of threats. And so when you are gathering 100,000 people in a stadium for a concert, and of course with the history of the Manchester terrorist attack against an Ariana Grande concert, the government has a right to be concerned about a situation like that.
It was not blanket celebrity treatment. It was a direct operational response to an active, identified danger, and several senior government officials were reportedly present that evening as well.
Is a fantastic comparable example, because obviously the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017 by Salman Abedi was a horrific attack against, not against Taylor necessarily, but against her audience. And many, many children died in that horrific suicide attack. So when we look at Harry...
Compare that to Harry's situation, a private citizen traveling with his own privately funded security team, with no new intelligence pointing to any specific threat directed at him.
I hate to tell him this, but he's constitutionally irrelevant, and so are his children. And as time marches on, and this happens in every single royal family, as time marches on, Harry will get more and more and more irrelevant, and so will his children.
Not remotely comparable. And the public response made that unmistakably clear almost instantly. While all of this was unfolding, the leaks, the denials, the contradicting headlines, something else was happening almost entirely beneath the radar. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had quietly taken on the National Three Peaks Challenge. Ben Nevis in Scotland, Scafell Pike in England, and Snowdon in Wales, all three of Britain's highest mountains, climbed within 24 hours in support of the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity, the very hospital that had treated her.
Princess of Wales, that has just been announced, has completed the Three Peaks Challenge for the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity. And when you think about Catherine and compare it, again, to the stupidity we are going to go over, I just feel like Catherine is just an example of how royals...
There was no itinerary leaked in advance, no press release building anticipation, no public conversation about security arrangements or logistics. She simply did it, and only afterward did the public learn it had happened at all. She reached the final peak, Snowdon, as the sun was setting on Sunday evening, greeted not by a camera crew, but by her husband, their 3 children, and her own parents waiting at the base.
It's greeted at the base of Snowdon on Sunday evening by Prince William, their 3 children, her parents, Carol and Michael Middleton, and brother James.
In a short video released afterward, she spoke directly about what the challenge had meant to her, her own experience with illness, and her gratitude toward the people who had cared for her.
Lots of people have asked me why I'm doing this challenge, and partly it's personal. I'm so grateful to be here, to be strong enough to walk these hills. But more importantly, it's to give something back and acknowledge really all the incredible work going on up and down this country. I've met some incredible people, those people who are living with and beyond cancer. And I know personally how difficult.
The timing, landing in the exact same week as the Sussex security collapse, was noticed by everyone paying close attention.
Talking, she had to say a couple of sentences and then pause and think. And then she had to say a couple of sentences and then think and use her brain and not have something written for her by her poor assistants that get mistreated and fired. Did you see it, Meghan? That's called authentic. That's authentic. That's real.
Here's the part that may not surprise many of you watching this. For weeks, people right here in the comments had already been saying it. This trip was never fully solid to begin with. Some predicted the security situation would ultimately become the exit route. Others said plainly, don't believe any of it until you actually see them land in the UK. Now, to be fair, whether this entire visit was staged as theater from the very beginning remains speculation. Intent cannot be proven, and that needs to be said clearly. But what is not speculation is the pattern. This now marks one of several occasions in recent years where a high-profile Sussex announcement has unraveled within days of going public. Nigeria, Colombia, and now this. At a certain point, a pattern like that stops resembling bad luck and begins to look considerably closer to a deliberate approach. And many viewers had already identified that pattern long before this week's headlines caught up with it. So where does all of this actually leave the king? By most accounts, Charles remains personally open to a meeting, reportedly even floating the idea of Meghan and the children flying in for a single day rather than the full week-long visit. But that idea is not attracting support from the rest of the family. William, according to several sources, has no interest in participating in any reconciliation at this point. Camilla, by most accounts, even less so, which leaves Charles caught in an almost impossible position. A father who genuinely wants time with his grandchildren, surrounded by people close to him who feel this entire situation has already cost the family far more than it should have.
Doesn't miss Prince Harry. The king does not recognize this Prince Harry. You know, the king is not going to bend over backwards because he doesn't even know who this new person is that has developed over the last few years, capable of writing such a hateful book, capable of participating in a docuseries which accuses the royal family of racism, years of racism, you know, and all of the chaos that they've stirred in the last few years.
Whether he extends an olive branch once more or finally decides enough is enough could end up defining the next chapter of this entire story more than anything Harry or Meghan do next. So that is exactly where things stand right now. But this story is nowhere near its conclusion, and there is more here you need to see. Check out the videos on screen for the rest of the picture.